Greetings, Earthlings. This is Jake Pentland. My mother will not be able to host this week. She's working on a very, very exciting project. It's good news. It's great for her. Your boy Jake Pentland's been working hard in the background to make this happen. I can't say any more, but you're going to be very, very happy and soon. That's all I'm going to say. But in the meantime, instead of taking the week off and losing our momentum and steam for this podcast, since it's going to continue and she loves doing it, I just decided to fill in this week. So hopefully you stick around. I know you're here for the Roseanne Barr Podcast, not the Jake Pentland Podcast. But I have a great guest, and it's going to be a great show. Joel Gilbert, the filmmaker behind Roseanne Barr is America, is on today. And he made a great film about my mother, and I want to tell you about it and talk to him about it. And that's it. So stick around. It's going to be a great show. Welcome to the Roseanne Barr Podcast.
Oh, you see, my patience is growing thin.
Well, I want to introduce to you guys, although you probably already know who he is because he's Steve Bannon's favorite filmmaker. By the way, Joel, that was a very cool moment for us. Joel Gilbert is the filmmaker and documentarian. I always have trouble saying that word. Behind many great films, but my personal favorite, and I am biased, of course, is Roseanne Barr is America. Joel came to the house. He filmed my mother. He did a great job. We were in D.C. last month promoting this film. There was a little bit of a hiccup we'll talk about, but long story short, it is available now. It's available everywhere. I'll let you talk about that, Joel. But it's a tremendous film. And obviously, if you're watching this podcast and you haven't, stop watching because my mom's not here. If you're a fan of this podcast, you're obviously a fan of Roseanne Barr. And Joel, I just want to say thank you again. You did her right. It's rare the story of my mother is told properly. And I just want to say I'm very happy with the project. So.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Well, a lot of people know me from my films like Dreams from My Real Father, about Obama's background, the Trayvon Hoax, where I blew the lid off the woke hoax that was the Trayvon Martin case, where they set up George Zimmerman with a fake witness and started the whole Black Lives Matter movement out of that. So I do appear in a lot of my films to take people around on kind of a journey of discovery. I went to Florida and met Trayvon's real girlfriend, who really was on the phone with him, who they swapped out for a fake witness. I did a film about Michelle Obama. I took you to Chicago. But when I talked to your mom, Roseanne Barr, and reviewed a lot of her material, I realized that I got to make a different kind of film because your mom has just a tremendous charisma on camera. Roseanne is a great storyteller in her own right. So I just, from the get-go, I said the best way to make this film is just to get out of the way and let Roseanne tell her own story. Because I felt from reviewing a lot of the news coverage of your mom the last few years, there were just bits and pieces of her story about her biography growing up, how she was successful, became a comedy legend and icon. And then the whole cancellation thing where they targeted her for being a Trump supporter when the media was in a frenzy to try to smear Donald Trump and his supporters as racist, and how your mom kind of recovered from that. So I felt it really could only be told as a complete story. And there's no greater storyteller and a person who, just is so hilarious and fun to watch. So that's how I approached the film from the get-go. We sat your mom down for 2 long interviews, 3 hours on 2 days, so about 6 hours. And from that, I edited in what I'm very proud of is a 90-minute full-length documentary interview called Roseanne Barr is America. And when you watch the film, you realize why Roseanne Barr is America, because she grew up Salt Lake City in a immigrant Jewish family with Holocaust survivors, overcame tremendous obstacles growing up that a lot of people don't know about, went out to Hollywood and became an immediate sensation with her incredible personality, her working class background that people, latched onto. And she's had just a tremendous, fascinating life, and so many people love her. So that's how the movie came about. And I've had a distributor for about over 20 years, and they were happy to put it out on DVD. It's also available on all the big live stream and video on demand forums, YouTube Movies, Apple TV, you name it, you should find it, Amazon Prime. And I think it's going to be a big movie for a long time to come.
Yeah, I agree. Well, first of all, obviously we want, if you haven't seen the movie, I want you to go see it because it's great. And there's no bigger fan of my mom than me. And like I said,
Except for maybe me. We've argued about this.
yeah, well,
It's not resolved. It's unresolved.
it's unresolved. But what's interesting to me about my mother is like my relationship with my mother is unusual in a lot of ways because I work for her. We do this podcast together. I'm able to objectively remove myself as her son and view her as a fan. I have never seen her story properly told up until that point, until your film. So if you're a fan of my mom, again, Roseanne Barr is America, go check it out. And I want to talk specifically about what you captured, which is my favorite thing about my mother, is she's the voice of the voiceless. It's just something in her body. It's a gift from God. And no matter what time, what place, what's going on in the world, she is able to put herself in the shoes of the people that are sort of being walked over or ignored. She feels compelled to defend them. And it's fascinating to me because she is able to change with the landscape of politics and the landscape of America, and has shown that history for 40, 50 years now, that whoever that group is, she's going to defend. And it's rare for anybody, especially an entertainer, to rise above their biases and their political groups and whatever to defend the voiceless people. It really comes from her heart and from God, and it's tremendous to watch. What's really fascinating to me, Roseanne Barr is America, is that she has never changed, but America has. And you can really view the lens of America through her story, because she was once canceled by the American right for after the national anthem. They thought she spit on the flag, and George Bush Sr. went after her, and the show took a lot of heat, and she was seen as sort of like this liberal communist pushing the gay agenda on television and destroying the family. And she was standing up at that time for gays who were voiceless at that time, and she stood up for them when they became part of the LGBTQ mafia that she talks about, and they got all this political power. She didn't defend them as much. She started to defend the working class of America that was being ignored by corporations and the American government, and that's how she led into the MAGA movement, because that is what MAGA stands for. And right now, MAGA is shifting, and she's now moving to a new group that she feels is voiceless. And that's just interesting to me, that my mom is sort of this, I don't know how to describe it, this immovable force that the world kind of moves through. She's this filter, and wherever people are being wronged, that's where she'll be. And I find that tremendous and fascinating, and not everybody knows that. And you do know that. So.
Yeah, I learned a tremendous amount about Roseanne, about your mom, from researching and interviewing her and creating the film. And one of the things I learned that I did not know is she even said it. It's in clips in the movie where she's actually telling a reporter back in the 90s, she says the Roseanne show is an anti-television show. It's just that the executives don't realize it. And so she was kind of battling the executives and battling the writers from the get-go.
Yeah.
And she talked about, when you watch the movie Roseanne Barr is America, she talks about how all her comedy really was political from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So it shouldn't have been surprising that she did decide to go into politics and run for president. She made that film about her run for president in 2012 called Roseanne for President. And, she gave a hell of a good political speech. And as you said, she really represented the voiceless, and she was the first person to combine comedy and politics. It really hadn't been done. Mm-hmm. And when you see the early Donald Trump, I actually made a movie about Trump called Trump, the Art of the Insult, which is hilarious. It's from the 2016 campaign. It's basically Donald Trump doing stand-up. The whole campaign, he's just being funny. And I'm sure he got that idea from Roseanne Barr, who in 2012 was the first to combine comedy and politics. She ran against Romney and Obama, and she was hilarious, and she made them look pretty boring. And I think Donald Trump picked up on that. So I think Roseanne Barr was the first Donald Trump when it comes to politics, and Donald Trump just kind of took it to the next level. But Roseanne is the original, I think, originator of bringing entertainment and comedy to politics, which I think ultimately made Donald Trump a success.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective. She would tell you it was Dick Gregory that inspired her, because I would retort. Again, I love what you're saying, but I think there have been other people that have kind of ran as president, kind of in a joking manner. I forget the guy's name. Don't steal this book. Was it Abby Hoffman or something? Don't quote me on any of that. But there've been a history of comedians doing this, but she took it very seriously. She actually got on the state ballot. She finished fourth, fifth. She went for the nomination, and I think that's the difference. And there's a line in that documentary, Roseanne Barr for President, where she says, "I am the only serious comedian."
That's right.
Race. And that's my favorite joke of hers of all time, because it did kind of highlight the fact that Romney and Obama were trying to be charming and funny, and also a lot of their policies were laughable. So she saw herself as the most serious contender. She really did. And she was a comedian. But in some sense, society sometimes requires people to step outside the box and look at it objectively to really tell you, what you don't see when you're caught up in the day to day. And I love that she's done that as well. I want to tell you a real quick story. I know I'm blabbering, but when my mom got the show, right, she got Roseanne. She was a housewife. This is all true. I was there. Hey guys, it's Jake here. As you know, I'm an old middle-aged man who's graying and bald, and I have 2 daughters and a wife, and I need to take care of them. So life insurance is something that I look into all of the time. But as I was investigating and talking to my brother-in-law, Josh, who many of you know from republiclifenow.com and the annuities program that we sold, the guy's a genius. He told me about a new product that is part of the life insurance, parachute, if you will, but it's called Living Benefits. And it's going to change the game. And I wanted to tell you about it because you guys got to get into it right now. And essentially what it is it's a life insurance policy. You pay it, the whole thing. And then if something, God forbid, happens and you, while you're alive, need that money, you don't have to wait until you're dead for it to go to your family when it could have helped save your life. With Living Benefits, you can access your own life insurance policy payout, or whatever you want to call it, while you're alive. Let's say you get a catastrophic illness or get caught on fire or something horrible happens. You can pull from your own life insurance policy and save your own life. Go to republiclifenow.com, check it out. Make sure you ask for the Living Benefits life insurance because it's a separate part of life insurance. I don't want to get too technical, but just think about it. You can actually potentially save your own life with your own life insurance policy. It's a game changer, and I highly recommend you do it. She started stand-up as a hobby. It went really well for her, went really fast. And in a matter of, I think it was like 6-7 years, she had the #1 show on television from when she started, maybe 8 years, whatever. But the point was, she gets this show, and we moved to LA, and now, my mom that was making hamburger helper at the table while my dad worked at the post office is bringing home a tape that was a pilot. It was the Roseanne show. It was called Life and Stuff, but it had Goodman on it. And we were watching it, and I was young. I was 11. And I remember when she put the tape in going, wow, my mom's getting a TV show. This is crazy, right? And she watched the episode and took the tape out and started crying. And I was like, oh, these must be tears of happiness because she made it. She was plucked from obscurity. And she hated the episode, hated it. And my dad had to talk her down. I remember this night. I'll always remember this night. He's like, you have a show. Like, what are you doing? You're in Hollywood now. Like, you've gotten everything you wanted. And she hated it. And she went to the studio the next day and demanded rewrites and started fighting when it was still in pilot form. And they tried to fire her. So when I say my mom comes from a place from her heart and from God, I'm talking the truth, because everybody else, I don't care who you are, how pious or deep you think you are, I guarantee you, if every one of us was given a show, we would do whatever the network says. We would sell whatever product they want. We'd be so happy to have that sort of power. And she looked at it as like, they don't get her. And she went to war and she won. And that, to me, that is the most American thing, because an outlaw with success and still staying an outlaw, that's a true American spirit, man. It's awesome to watch.
Well, it happened to her both in the entertainment world and in politics, where there was a set formula that had been existing for years of how an entertainment show and a comedy show is how it's supposed to go, who the characters are supposed to be. She mentions in the film that in the first go-round of her script, her husband was a Hollywood guy, and she'd seen that 100 times. So they have this formula, and they expected Roseanne to fit into it and simply do their bidding. And your mom had none of it. And she said, no, we're going to have an actual show because I want to be number one and I want to relate to real people, not these bougie characters that you've been running for 30 years. And the same thing happened to her in politics, where the Democrat Party at that time, Barack Obama, Mitt Romney, presidential politics was just based on this formula. You go and talk to some donors, you put out some ads, you do a couple of speeches. It's all formulaic. And your mom came to break that formula and be herself. And lo and behold, average people, average voters, just like the average television viewer, could relate to that, could relate to your mom. And we're sick of these formulaic agendas that were being pushed from above.
Absolutely. And she continues to fight that. I think she views formula as a challenge. Like it's a mold to break, which is also very American. And I want to talk about some of your other. I mean, we've talked about Rose, and again, check out Roseanne Barr is America. It's available everywhere.
Go to the website at RoseanneIsAmerica.com. Watch the trailer, and that'll link you up where to get the movie. RoseanneIsAmerica.com.
But you've made other films, and I admire your work, Joel. I don't want to just talk about the Roseanne Barr is America documentary, but you mentioned the Trayvon hoax, and I don't know. Most people don't know this about me because I deleted it off the internet when cancel culture came, because it was pretty racy stuff that I was doing. But I used to do a podcast, and I actually remember when the Trayvon story was breaking. It's fascinating to me, that case, because I've seen this pattern repeat where you can see pretty quick, if you're a little bit sharp and a little bit aware, you can kind of see the narrative machine early on. And I remember when the Zimmerman case started, the Trayvon case, they lightened his skin because it was a white guy shoots black kid. Well, Zimmerman was kind of brownish. And I remember the news reports, they were actually photoshopping his skin like they did to Joe Rogan with COVID when they made him look green when he was talking about ivermectin. Yeah. And they also scrubbed Trayvon's Twitter. At the time, he had one called No Nonsense Nigga. And he had been gotten in trouble at school for stealing jewelry and all sorts of shit. And they took and started posting photos of him when he was like 11 or 12 years old and was like the sweet young boy. And this happened like within the first day of the shooting. So I, being someone who's grown up in this business and pretty aware, I'd like to think, saw this as like, okay, there is a machine behind this story. The facts aren't getting out. And I started to report on the facts. In that case, 100% was a hoax. And I just want to say thank you. That's another documentary you can check out of Joel's. And that's excellent.
I can tell you that, look, in a quick synopsis is the Trayvon Martin trial, the trial of George Zimmerman, the whole thing was a political hit job to help the Democrat Party because Barack Obama had done nothing for the black community as president, and the election was coming up, and they were desperate to try to get the black vote out again. They weren't going to come out for Obama. The economy had gotten worse. Illegals took jobs. Obama didn't have any black people in his administration. And he kind of got exposed for what he is. He's a white guy from Hawaii that was raised with white grandparents and had nothing in common with black people, had no common experiences. He didn't know any of them except for Michelle Obama, who was like Barack. She was afraid of black people. She grew up, she got beat up by the black kids, would beat her up, accuse her of acting white and talking white. And Obama did nothing for black people. So they wanted to inflame the black community. And they stumbled upon this case where the local police in Sanford, Florida, had exonerated George Zimmerman. They said this is a pure self-defense case. They had an eyewitness, Jonathan Good, that said, yeah, Trayvon was beating the crap out of him, MMA style, and George was screaming for help. Zimmerman eventually fires one shot to save his life from choking to death on his broken nose and being pummeled to death. And when Ben Crump and Al Sharpton went down with all these street protests, that's when Crump held a press conference and played an audio tape, and he said, "This is Trayvon's 16-year-old girlfriend," and he played a tape of her saying stuff, but she didn't really say anything. And Crump said, "We've got all the evidence now. Arrest George Zimmerman." And Obama picked up on it. The FBI got involved, and they demanded Zimmerman be arrested. Now, I remember when Rachel Jeantel showed up a year later. The public, she was 19 years old, weighed 200 pounds more than Trayvon, and went to a different school. and she didn't sound anything like the girl in that tape. I remember thinking that in 2012, but hadn't investigated it at the time. And I can tell you that very problematic. Our Attorney General Pam Bondi under Trump, the MAGA Attorney General, I'm very concerned about, because it was Pam Bondi who was the Attorney General of Florida at the time. And Pam Bondi, instead of saying, I'm going to look at the evidence from the investigation and say, oh, sorry, Ben Crump, sorry, Al Sharpton, sorry, Obama, this has been investigated. It's self-defense. See you later. Instead, she caved into the mob. She appointed a special prosecutor that indicted George Zimmerman. She defended Ben Crump, said that Trayvon's parents were her friends. So Pam Bondi had no backbone. She caved into the mob. So I have a lot of concerns whether Pam Bondi will execute the MAGA agenda, because I don't know if Trump knows her history as really being responsible for Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter was founded based on Zimmerman, of course, being exonerated because he was innocent. But if Pam Bondi had a backbone, there would be no Black Lives Matter, no Ferguson, no George Floyd.
Right.
So,
and don't forget, Mike Brown, part of that narrative machine was the hands up, don't shoot of Mike Brown, who was shot by a police officer. And they said he was shot, in the head and the back. And they made up all the hands up, don't shoot. That never happened. That was a lie. And he actually, when they went back to the evidence, he was actually reaching into the police cruiser trying to grab the gun of the cop.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know or forgot about the case right after the George Floyd incident. 6 months later, the Ahmaud Arbery shooting in Georgia.
Yes.
Very similar to the Zimmerman case. Travis McMichael recognized with his father, this jogger, Arbery. They recognized him from some videotape from a previous robbery. They followed him and just said, hey, the cops are coming. We called the cops. And please wait for the cops, just like Zimmerman tried to follow Trayvon to keep eyes on him till the cops came.
Yeah.
And McMichaels ended up parking their car in the street, and Arbery approaches them and then rushes and attacks McMichael, who's holding a rifle. Suicidal attack. At least Trayvon Martin didn't know that Zimmerman had a gun. In this case, he knows he's got a gun. He's smashing him in the face, trying to take his gun away. So there was a self-defense shooting. McMichael shot him to try to save his life from losing his weapon and being shot. And sure enough, Crump and Sharpton showed up, street protests, even though they were exonerated by the videotape. And they got life without parole. In a horrific woke justice case that I'm also following. But in the Trayvon case, I actually found the real girlfriend, Diamond Eugene, and she was on the phone with Trayvon before he was shot. But she had another boyfriend who was kind of playing Trayvon at the time. And she didn't want to lie to the police. She didn't want the police, to out her. So after meeting with Ben Crump and Trayvon's parents, she refused to testify. So they swapped her out for Rachel Gentile, was her half sister, 2 years older, 200 pounds heavier than Trayvon, who just lied and lied. But if you watch my film, The Trayvon Hoax, when she was interviewed by the police, by the prosecutors the first time, at the end of the interview, she actually admitted she didn't know anything. She said, I feel guilty 6 times. They said, why do you feel guilty? I got it on tape. She said, I ain't know anything. I ain't know anything. And they ignored her. So it's been a rough few years with all these cases. It's all based on these media hoaxes. And certainly Roseanne has been one that is fighting these narratives and media hoaxes. And she was, as we get into the Roseanne Barr is America film, we really dissect how she was canceled back in 2018 for what was a very funny, edgy tweet. I mean, your mom's a comedian. She put out this tweet. It was during the time that she was talking to Iranians about the Iranian nuclear program. She'd been in touch with Iranian anti-hijab activists. Valerie Jarrett had said she was born in Iran. Everybody thought she was Iranian. So your mom put out the tweet that said, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is an organization which wants to take control, and the Planet of the Apes movie, which is this big militaristic world conquest, had a baby. It'd be Valerie Jarrett. That was very funny. But
the greatest tweet of all time. My favorite tweet ever.
Yeah. So, within moments, they said, they called your mom and said, did you know Valerie Jarrett was 10% black or whatever it was? No. And then, well, it must be because you're racist. So they were trying to target and smear Trump supporters as racist. And your mom was the most high profile one because she was a Trump supporter in real life and on her television show where she was trying to reconcile things. So the whole premise of the show was we have a Trump supporter and a Hillary supporter living under the same roof, and we still love each other. So your mom was just such a humanitarian, civil rights activist, gay rights activist. So just the very idea that they would put through these charges, oh, well, you meant to be racist. The worst thing that should have happened is they would have said, oh, well, you didn't know she was black like so many other people, so just forget it. That's what they should have done.
Well, they would have if she had supported Hillary Clinton. That would have happened.
They would have.
And that's
You'll see in the film at the same time, Whoopi Goldberg, Samantha Bee made vile anti-Semitic scripted comments and smeared horrible sexual innuendos against Ivanka Trump. And they, oh, I just apologize, no problem. Jesse Jackson, vile anti-Semitic comments. Oh, no problem, you're forgiven. But for Republicans, the cancel culture is intended as a political tool to disenfranchise people that don't agree with the big narrative. And I think
exactly
your mom has fought back from it, and I think the film is going to be very successful and really hit home for people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, she's never changed. That fight's always been the same, and it's even bigger than my mother. We can see. I mean, we've been through COVID now. Those of us that are aware, and I'm seeing something right now I talk about all the time that I don't know if everyone's caught up to, but you definitely can see, if you're sharp, you can see this overarching, whoever is controlling the narrative, disperse the information they want to disperse, and they'll lie, cheat, and steal. And if you call it out, you're the one that gets ran over, labeled disenfranchised, deplatformed, canceled, whatever. It's a story as old as time. It's not unique to America. This is always how human nature has gone. If they don't like you telling the truth, they'll silence you. It goes back to, I mean, Galileo was was killed for suggesting we went around the sun, right? So this is a story as old as time. What I just find so fascinating is, and I don't want to spin this off because we're here to talk about your films, but just something I'm thinking about this morning is, how can a group, and I'm talking now about the woke right MAGA group that I'm currently at war with, how can people that are so sharp and saw through Trayvon and saw through Mike Brown and saw through Obama and saw through COVID and saw through all the indictments of Trump, Hillary Clinton, like the whole mass marketing brainwashing campaign at some levels was on a global scale, and we held our ground, we saw through it. It's so shocking to me that today, those same people that were so aware do not see it happening to them right now. In regards, of course, I don't want to spin this off, but how everything is just so anti-Israel and anti-Jew right now, and you're seeing it in this thing, and it's like, how are you guys not sharp now? You've been through Mike Brown, Trayvon, Trump, COVID, and I can name a million other things. How are you not seeing this same media machine at play? And what is different now to where you're manipulated, to where you're lost your sense and healthy? What's the word I'm looking for? Where you just don't believe it. You're a critic. What's the word?
Skeptical.
Yeah, your healthy skepticism. Like, it's gone. It's out the window, and it's very weird to me, because when we talk about your films or my mom's history, there are quite a few of us that have been right now for a long fucking time. Like, we're not new to being right. We're not new to being in the minority and fighting the oppressive majority that controls all speech. This is a Tuesday for us. So it's just very scary that now we're at a part where the people that are as smart as us are now a victim to it.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing when you see people that should know better tend to get sucked into these fake narratives again. And it is happening as regard the Middle East. There's always something shocking going on. One of my good friends in Australia named John Ruddock is with the Libertarian Party there. Very skeptical guy, full of common sense. He actually invited me over and I showed my climate hoax movie over there in Australia last year, The Climate According to AI Al Gore. So John Ruddock is hardcore common sense libertarian over in Australia. He just came out with all this crazy mumbo jumbo anti-Israel rhetoric for no reason. He should know better. So I've been writing him emails. I'm going to talk to him and say, look, here's what's going on. Hamas would not compromise or give up the hostages. If they had 6 months ago and the war ended, Emmanuel Macron would not be recognizing a Palestinian state. John Ruddock in Australia wouldn't come out with this anti-Israel stuff. It's simply because these people that should know better, they say, well, Hamas won't cooperate. There's nothing we can do. the only person we can really talk to is our ally. So let's go ahead and turn on our ally because we have to do something. So it's very shallow thinking, and it's disappointing when they don't understand and learn the lesson of previous hoaxes and what these people are really up to. But I think your mom has been so steadfast for so many years in standing up to each one of these things as they come up. So we said at the beginning, I'm a big fan, and we still don't know who the biggest fan is.
Yeah, and apart from all your films, you are an expert in the Middle East. I mean, I remember you telling me this in DC when we were doing the press tour for this. I found that so fascinating. Like, you're an actual expert, like degrees and the whole deal, right?
Yeah, I studied Middle East history. I speak Hebrew and Arabic, and lived in the region. I actually lived in a dormitory at the University of London, where I went to school at the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. I actually lived with many students from the Arab and Muslim world, and that was an education. That was like my PhD, talking to these guys. And I learned a lot about the mentality of the Middle East and the movement of Islamism, which Western countries don't understand quite well. I'll give you a quick synopsis of the main conflict, and that has to do with the concept of nationalism. Nationalism is a loyalty to a nation state, and it only emerged in about the 16th or 17th century. Loyalty in the Western Christian world was to the Pope, to the Church, and it led to civil strife and the Reform movement in Europe, and about 100 years of civil war between Catholics and Protestants. And they resolved this conflict by introducing the concept of nationalism. Nationalism was a new idea. Instead of being loyal to the church, you're loyal to the nation state. You're French because you speak French. You're Italian, you're German. Your loyalty is now to your regional area and your language. You're English. So that was a Christian solution to Christian problems, and it was very successful. It launched the Western world and the Christian world into the era of modernity, and they spread this concept of nationalism throughout the entire world. And Europe became very, very successful because of nationalism. The Islamic world had the opposite experience. In Islam was most successful in its first 1,000 years because of the dominance of religion in society. They conquered half of the civilized world, and all over, India and Africa, parts of Europe, the Middle East, parts of Asia became Islamic by the dominance of religion. It was only with the retreat of religious dominance, with the insertion of nationalism and Western governmental systems into the Islamic world starting in the early 1900s, that Islam went into decline. Islamic society has been in decline really for almost 300 years. So the movement of Islamism, like Hamas, the Iranian Revolutionary Movement, so many Islamist groups, Al-Qaeda, you name it, Muslim Brotherhood, they seek to return Islam to its traditional values and its traditional government, where Islam is the political force and dominates politically, as a way to heal themselves, as a way to restore the dominance of Islam and restore justice in their societies. They reject rich elites and poor masses like the Gulf Arabs, the Saudis, the UAE. They hate those guys because they don't believe in rich elites and poor masses. So this is the real conflict going on between East and West, is the Western world and Israelis don't understand that the Islamic world is going through what I call the revolt of Islam. It's a return to tradition to restore their society. So when Israel gave back Gaza to the PLO terrorist group in 2005, I made a film called Farewell Israel, Bush, Iran, and the Revolt of Islam. And I explained that the Israelis have a fundamental misunderstanding. They believe that peace is going to break out if you give territory to these terrorist groups. And it was a fatally flawed idea. I knew from the get-go they would have to go back in and destroy them and fight, because they would not live side by side in peace. So I've made a couple films, another one called Atomic Jihad about the Iranian nuclear program. I've written many articles trying to explain to the Western world the Islamic point of view and how they think and how they view peace agreements and exchanges of of territory. And the lack of understanding is what's caused all this war.
This is kind of what I was getting at, because I happen to think, and my mother obviously agrees with me. In fact, I agree with my mother. It's more her theory than mine. But the Muslim Brotherhood heavily influenced the Obama administration. Valerie Jarrett heavily influenced Obama. And we've seen a decline in our relationship with Israel really start, in our opinion, really started when Obama got in. And, the Muslim Brotherhood visited the Obama White House. It's on record, I think, more times than any other group by a lot. And you can see there's this sort of controlling group above Obama and a lot of the Democrat Party the last 15, 20 years. Ilhan Omar, AOC, there's this sort of anti-Israel are colonists. Islam is a religion of peace, this whole sort of movement that's been happening since Obama won. We see that as a narrative controlling, puppeteering force that is anti-West, anti-democracy, and anti-American values. I know for a fact we are not wrong. We are right on this one, because like you said it, this war, East versus West, really is this sort of Eastern philosophy of serfdom and no separation of church and state, right? Islam is the force. There is no nationalism. And America is purely Western, purely democracy, purely nationalism. And we are proud to be Americans. And there's no greater threat to Islam than America and Israel being strong. So when you start looking at the bigger scheme, like we talk about COVID and Trayvon Martin and all these forces, and of course the people on our side that are completely brainwashed, like the Jews run everything. How do you not notice that with Islam approaching, and you see what happens in Europe? I'm not making this up. This is all documented. You can see it. You can turn on your news today. You'll see it. That there's obviously this narrative pushing, that it's very important to that narrative and those puppet masters that Israel and America decline and that their relationship is severed. That is the most important thing to them. And it's obvious to me. So my question to you is, am I onto something? Is that what's happening? Is that...
Yeah, you're partially onto something. Let me explain why. It wasn't that the Muslim Brotherhood appeared at the White House. It's that Obama embraced the Muslim Brotherhood and invited them to the White House. He also went to Cairo and gave the speech encouraging Islamism as soon as he got elected. And I want to explain to you the reason for that. Socialists and communists like Barack Obama and hardcore Marxists have a lot in common with radical Islamists, because both groups feel that Western democracy and Western free market systems are an obstacle to taking power, and they're an obstacle to their success. So historically, Marxists and socialists have allied with Islamists, going back to the Soviet Union, allying with radical Islamists, because they want to fight the capitalist free market system. Now, both sides, the Islamists and the communists, believe that ultimately the other side is going to self-destruct once they get rid of the capitalists. But in the meantime, they're willing to fight together to try to harm Western interests, free markets, and free speech, and everything else. So you have to just always understand, go back to the idea that nationalism never succeeded in the Islamic world, because in the Islamic world, loyalty can only be to God and to Islam. It cannot be to a nation state. Nationalism was a Christian solution to Christian problems in Europe. It was a way to resolve their problems with the fight between Catholics and Protestants. It does not fit, it never fit into the Islamic world. That's why in the Islamic world you have rich elites and poor masses, or military government. Every time there's a free election in the Islamic world, like the Israelis stupidly gave Gaza to the PLO and said, let's have free elections. And of course, Hamas won, because they'll always elect Islamists into government. The PLO, by the way, was defunct in the 1980s. Arab nationalism died after the Iranian Revolution in 1979. So 20 years later, in 2005, Israel made an agreement with a defunct terrorist group that was hated by the masses. The PLO gave them all this territory with this ridiculous fantasy that peace is going to break out. Instead, the Hamas took over immediately and turned Gaza into a terror base. Mm-hmm. And the Israelis tried to kind of manage it for years, but it was always going to lead to an all-out war. Of course. So the fundamental lack of understanding and the Western world pushing these ideas of de-escalation. Let's de-escalate. In the Middle East, the way it works is only massive retaliation and threat of massive retaliation is what keeps the peace, not de-escalation. So we continue to have this clash of Western politicians and media trying to impose their values of peace and government into the Islamic world where it never fits properly. And that's why we have wars.
100%. And there, the Islamicists believe purely that our way of life is evil. I mean, I know I'm talking generalities, but it is true because we don't, submit to God. We are, we're whores. We're on OnlyFans. We do drugs. We drink. We eat bacon. And you know what? To be honest, in a lot of ways, they're not wrong. The Western way of life is, in a lot of ways, antithetical to a relationship with God. And I know that's an unpopular opinion, but the push for in capitalism, the push for success, for money, those things, Jesus himself said, the eye of the needle. I don't need to quote the Bible, but we all know what I'm talking about. The push for success in the Western countries, the capitalist agenda, in a lot of ways, is antithetical to God. And again, super unpopular opinion. I'm going to get flamed in the comments, but it's true. And Islam, in a lot of ways, is subduing yourself to Allah and to God, saying this is the only thing you have to care about. In a lot of ways, they are right when they make the case that they are closer to God in the way that they understand it. And I think that's another thing. When you say the West doesn't understand Islam, well, Islam doesn't understand the West because we are not driven by Satan at our heart or anti-God. We actually very much believe in God. This is a Christian nation here. Israel is a Jewish nation. We are all sons of Abraham. They don't understand that we can believe in God and have a relationship with God and still want liberty and peace and to coalesce and assimilate in our culture with other people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that's something they don't understand. They also think that we're easily manipulated and weak because liberals are, and a lot of Jewish liberals in America are, and a lot of people that are West are suicidal empathy, like Gad Saad calls it, or Isan Al, I can never remember her name, but they think we're kind of this useful idiot that they can manipulate and embed themselves. In a lot of ways, that's true as well. But the true Western man and woman, the true American, is a gun-toting, Bible-clutching fucking outlaw. And we are not going to be subdued. And we're not going to have someone come here and tell us how we have to have a relationship with God. We've gone to war over this. We had a revolution over this. It wasn't just taxes. Separation of church and state is fundamental to America for a reason, which is also antithetical to Islam. And basically what you're seeing is the West and East. This is a battle that goes for thousands of years, culminating now to where the West, America today, is now starting to give ground to the East and say, you know what? Maybe whites are bad. Maybe Israel's bad. Maybe Hamas is freedom fighters. Maybe they're a liberation army. And now ground is going and we are headed down a very, very scary path. And the people in charge of this narrative, shocker, another unpopular opinion, are not Jews. They're communists, they're Islamicists, they're Satanists. Some of them are Jewish, but this is not a Jewish or Christian group behind it. This is a communist / Chrislam / evil left-wing Jew, Islamic culmination globalist to destroy Western ideals. Thank you.
Well, one of the more entertaining aspects of this is when you see the gays for Gaza or whatever they call themselves. Somehow they don't realize that if they were to show up in Gaza, they'd be thrown off a roof.
I think they do realize it, but I think they hate white Trump supporters and Jews more. I think this is. I'll say this and then I'll back off and let you talk.
Yeah.
Their hatred of white colonizers, because they are communist, is as where they classify MAGA and where they classify Israel in their mind because they're stupid. So the white colonizer they're fighting, they would rather align themselves with people that would throw them off a building because they hate Jews and they hate MAGA Christians that much.
Well, like the Israeli left has actually gone through a little bit of they finally learned a big lesson because most of the people that were murdered by Hamas in the cross-border attack on October 7th were these kibbutzim that were far left Israelis living right there near Gaza.
Yeah.
Some of the people that were kidnapped used to pick up Palestinian kids in Gaza and take them to Israeli hospitals for free medical care.
Mm-hmm.
They were the biggest supporters of Hamas and Palestinian state, and they were the first ones that Hamas murdered and kidnapped. So I think most Israelis have finally learned their lesson that the Palestinians, Hamas, do not want an Israel of any size is acceptable, not a side-by-side state living in peace and security and all that nonsense. There have been some lessons learned, but there's still a long way to go.
Absolutely. And I think that the overall lesson that needs to be learned is that, and this I'm speaking to the woke right people that still listen to this podcast, that if you allow your hatred of Jewish people just because you don't like them, whatever your reason is, fine. You can be critical of Israel, fine. But your hatred of a group to allow yourself to be manipulated and twisted for a pro-Islam, pro-communist, anti-American nationalism agenda that you're basically letting a Trojan horse in to destroy you from within. That if you can't see that that's happening, that you would rather just go on Twitter and circle jerk about your hatred of Jews, that's more important to you than saving your country. That's really, really terrifying to me. And the scariest thing of all, I can let everything else go, the election fraud, Trayvon Hoax, the media, all this shit. Like before that, those were things we stood and fought on. But this is about our destruction as a people. And no one seems to care. They'd rather.
Let me make a comment about the big picture. This woke right people don't understand.
Yeah.
The United States cannot exist as a lone democracy in the world between two oceans. We cannot be a democracy. We cannot survive. We need strong democratic allies throughout the world. In Western Europe, Australia, in the Middle East, Israel, South America, we have to have a network of strong democracies worldwide to survive. America cannot survive sitting here with totalitarian world between two oceans. They'll get us.
Yeah.
So that's why America has to support a strong Australia, a strong Israel in the Middle East, strong democratic allies in Europe. This is what makes America great and survive. And the big woke right has lost sight of that when they want to pile on to undermine America's democratic allies. We need strong Israel. We need a strong Australia. We need a strong Western Europe with democracies, or we won't survive.
That's the weirdest part of the libertarian mindset, because really the woke right, I think, is born from libertarianism, which I like libertarians on their face, but this like foreign intervention, like the Candace, I think, is like this, and Tucker, which is why I'm not as critical of them as my mother is, because I understand it. It's like our tax dollars going there. We have homeless people on the street here. We have veterans that aren't getting food, and we're sending billions to Israel, and they have free healthcare. What the fuck? I understand that mindset very, very well, and I agree with it for the most part. But when you follow, just like communism is great on paper until you follow it in real life, and pure capitalism is great on paper until you follow it in real life, like the same thing is true with libertarianism. When you follow that, we are essentially now isolating ourselves, saying, hey, we have strong walls, we're America, we're all going to be great, we're going to build the roads with our own, out of our own hearts and minds and not tax the people because it's evil. Then now you have 3 billion Islamists or 4 billion Islamists. You have Russia getting stronger, and every country that surrounds us is now in unison, and they go, hey, that America, they got some good natural resources over there, and we won't see it coming, and we're done. The libertarian mindset of building your walls and strapping yourself in the end, in a global world where there's global war and nuclear weapons and the ability to cross oceans and shit, that is not a smart strategy. Having allies placed in the Middle East and Australia, like you said, a lot of times you can view it as from a military mindset. These are satellite bases. Israel is a satellite base, in my opinion, to America, and a region that hates us and wants us dead. That is very important. If anyone's ever played a single video game, a military video game, you understand the importance of having resources near the enemy. It's just smart to say.
Look, Israel for years was the eastern flank of NATO, even though not a NATO member. They kept the peace. They were, a block to Russian expansion in the Middle East. After the demise of the Soviet Union, they've been kept the peace, kept the Iranians in place, protected Jordan. They've done a lot to further American interests and protect American interests. It's like a big, Air Force base in the Middle East. So there's a whole geopolitical world that a lot of people don't think about or understand, and we have a lot of commentators on our side that are looking for clicks and want to be relevant and come out and say things that they don't know enough about. I've always admired your mom because she's always pretty in depth. We did some interviews in Washington, D.C. at The Hill. You can go online and check those out on YouTube. The Hill with One American News, Ruthless Podcast. And, Roseanne brings it. I mean, she really knows a lot about history. She knows a lot about politics. She gives you some very deep perspectives, even if they ask her some shallow questions. So you'll really enjoy the film Roseanne Barr is America because it's 90 minutes of Roseanne getting pretty deep. And I have not talked to anybody who only watched it once. They all say I watched it 3 or 4 times, and every time they watch it, they learn something more. So, your mom has been, just a great American, and I think this film really allows her the platform to put it all together for everybody that maybe only knew a few things about her.
Yeah. Again, Roseanne Barr is America. I am biased, but it is objectively a great film about a great American. And you did a great job, Joel. And, as we wrap up here, I'd like you to plug yourself a little bit more. I know you've mentioned other films, but where can people go to see these films?
Yeah, if you go to I'm on Twitter a lot, Joel S. Gilbert, initial S. And right up the top, it'll give you the link to Vimeo where you can live stream all of my films. I've made about 20 documentary feature films, starting with covering Bob Dylan. I'm actually a musician too. I have a Bob Dylan tribute band, and I play Bob Dylan, and many years performed. Even had Bob Dylan's band members in my band. It was pretty cool. So I made 4 movies about Dylan's career. I made a comedy about Paul McCartney called Paul McCartney Really Is Dead. It did so well, my distributor asked me to do another one about rock and roll mystery. So I made one called Elvis Found Alive, which is very funny. And then I made some very serious films on Middle East history, Farewell Israel, The Atomic Jihad, Trump, The Art of the Insult is very funny political films. I'm pretty well known for Dreams from My Real Father, where I presented a mountain of evidence that Obama's real biological father is the man he admits raised him in Hawaii, Frank Marshall Davis, who was one of the first black Bolsheviks out of Chicago. And he raised and radicalized Obama. And I put all that together. One of my best stories is on that film is I went to a speech when that film came out. I went to a speech by Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin. And I was sitting at the first table, and he walked over, and I said, "Oh, Senator Johnson, I enjoyed your speech. I'd like to introduce myself and tell you about my film." He said, "You don't have to introduce yourself. I've seen Dreams from My Real Father 10 times. Wow. So that was pretty cool. So I think that film made a big impact.
Well, it's a pretty telling film because, there is weird history around Obama's upbringing. We all know about the birth certificate and, believe what you want. But there's Bill Ayers. Obama does have a history of being around very, very pro-Marxist people from the time he was born. It's undeniable at this point. And you said earlier in this interview, there is a correlation with Marxism and Islamicists. Valerie Jarrett was his brain, his Karl Rove. She was Iranian and I believe part of the Muslim Brotherhood. So you can see that if when you watch your films, that this is not something that I'm making up. This is a guy with a history of Marxist, potentially his.
Oh yeah, no. Obama was radicalized. He admits by Frank Marshall Davis. I've talked to Obama's best friend Keith Kakagawa, and he told me that Obama hung out with Frank 2-3 times a week. He wanted to emulate Frank Marshall Davis. Obama was it was called the New Party back then. That was the precursor to the Democrat Socialists that Zoran Mandami is part of. Obama was in the New Party in Chicago. He was a member of the far left radical Democrat Socialist precursor called the New Party. And like Mandami, he chose to run in the Democrat Party to get power. At that time, Obama did something called stealth socialism. He didn't talk about socialism openly. He pretended, well, no, I support Israel. I support the Constitution. Marriage is between man and a woman and God. Mm-hmm. He tried to clean up his background. And then when he became president, he threw the voters under the bus and pursued this radical agenda that nobody voted for. But the stealth socialism of the Democrat Party during Obama has now turned into open socialism of Zoran Mandami, where he just openly says, well, we're going to seize the means of production, and we're going to open grocery stores and cancel rent and tax white people. So Obama started it with the stealth, and unfortunately the Democrat Party has pretty much adopted this radical socialism, and today it's this radical socialist party. But Obama's the one that created the radicalism, first by pretending not to be radical, but then pursuing the radical agenda anyway.
Trojan horse. That's how they operate. Communists and Islamicists and a lot of nefarious people. They don't come out and tell you what they're going to do. That's going to destroy your country. They're smart. And they're like, hey, I'm just like you guys. And they lie. There's a word for it. Islam. Taqiyya. Like, it's okay to lie and justify the means.
And justify the means.
And that's terrifying, because it's like, oh, well then, am I being lied to? Is Mondani, are these people that what they're telling me is truly their agenda? Do I trust them? And you have to be sharp, and you have to be skeptical. And again,
we really lack education. I've done films and a lot of research of films. Back in the 50s and 60s, you'd have mainstream Hollywood. John Wayne would do these public service announcements against communism.
Yeah.
He'd explain what free markets are and what communism does. And in communism, everybody's going to be poor. You're going to starve to death.
Yeah.
So why don't we just go with the free markets? It's working pretty good. Yeah. So we haven't had that kind of education for many years. It's kind of been the opposite. They've kind of indoctrinated our public system of education, universities, with this whole socialist stuff.
Yeah.
So the average person just kind of doesn't know the history that well. And that's why we get people voting for Mamdani without really understanding maybe what they're voting for, until it's too late.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dennis Prager from back in the day. He talked about this a lot, that the biggest, and someone asked him what the biggest threat to America was in the future. They assumed he would mention the people I'm mentioning, but he said the greatest enemy is that Americans don't know what it means to be an American anymore.
Lack of education.
Well, also they don't know that there's a true thing called American exceptionalism. I mean, Obama said it wasn't, but it's true. America is exceptional. We have an exceptional history. We're exceptional people, and that pride's sort of been taken away. And now it's this guilt, this white guilt, this colonizer guilt, what they're doing to Israel too. We're great. Israel and America are great. We do great things.
Well, if you ask people around the world in other countries, they'll tell you America is great. We survive because of America. We want to be like America. Only because of America, we have a goal of how we can be better. Yeah. So America is still admired around the world, but it becomes quite a challenge, especially during the Biden years when the government itself is trying to undermine the country. The people abroad who look up to us lose hope, and they wonder what's going to happen to them if America goes down. And what we're seeing now in the last 6 months is a reversal of a very sharp, frightening decline of the Biden years. And it's going to take a couple more years for Trump to really get us out of it, as the Democrats try to fight back with the judges and everything else to stop the recovery. The Marxists are furious that Trump is bringing good lifestyle and success to the average worker. They're furious about that. They want to reverse it. That's what the whole climate change initiative was about. I made that film called The Climate According to AI Al Gore. I was actually an intern, believe it or not. I worked for Senator Al Gore when he was a senator from Tennessee. He was a conservative senator at the time, and I was a student in Washington. So I got to know him a little bit. So I made this film kind of exposing the whole hoax that Al Gore brought to the world with his climate theories. There's a funny joke I heard recently where someone said, why don't they have climate change policies in China? And the answer is, oh, they already have communism in China. So that's what it's all about. The climate hoax is all about attacking the free market system. It's the same old gang with the same old socialist solutions, government control, decentralization. Give all your money to the government.
Yep.
And It's just anti-free markets.
Anti-free market, and we cannot let these people control not just the narrative, but our minds. Because once you give into it, there's no going back. You can't vote your way out of communism. You can't vote your way out of Islam. And if America falls, you can't. There's no way out. There's no way out for the majority of the world. We are that important. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. We've plugged you and your films enough. I hope everybody goes and rushes to your website and again checks out Roseanne Barr is America. But for you, I have one final thing to say to you before I hang up on you. Thank you so much for your espresso tutorial. I have gotten pretty dang good. Joel told me about the pre-marinated, pre-infusion.
Yes, there you go.
I also have been using the espresso beans you suggested. They're incredible. I have a thermometer in my milk as I steam. I would love sometime, if you're in the area, we're in LA now, but when we get back to Texas, to make you a cappuccino and see how it ranks. I'm sure it's not as good as yours, but I'm working on it. You know, Joel, we went to a restaurant. He sends back every cappuccino they make.
Right.
And tells them how to make it. It's pretty funny. All right, Joel, anything else before I hang up on you?
Very cool. Just everyone hit the website, RoseanneIsAmerica.com, RoseanneIsAmerica.com. Watch the trailer, link up, read about it. It's really the greatest movie I ever made. And if you don't watch it, you're missing out.
Absolutely. And this Saturday night, you are in Vegas right now in a hotel room. You're going to screen the film with the Gateway Pundit. My mom's going to remotely connect to the Q&A portion. So is that going to be live for people? Can people hear? Because this episode will air Friday. They'll be able to tune in, or is it a private event?
I don't know if we're live streaming the Q&A or not. I can ask about that. But, watch the movie, watch it again, and you're going to really learn a lot. And it's just so fun. Roseanne is still hilarious. She's got so much charisma. There's so much you don't know. Yeah. So definitely check out the movie.
Well, thank you for doing right. Thank you for doing right by my mother and Joel. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Oh, you see.